Hi there, I'm Eddie Spuhghetti, and welcome to the 13 Days of Halloween. Leading up to Halloween, I'm going to be discussing my favorite picks for films, TV shows, and TV specials, all kinds of stuff that I love to watch around this time of year and that I think you would be into as well. With that, let's get to my pick for this video. Waxwork, 1988, directed and written by Anthony Hickox, starring Zach Galligan, Deborah Foreman, and Dana Ashbrook. Waxwork. Okay, let's see if I can explain this without spoiling what the movie has in store for you. Essentially, Waxwork is about a wax museum that opens up in a small town, and a group of friends are invited to check it out from the curator, David Warner, aka Evil British Guy. And it turns out that it's not really just a wax museum, there's a lot more going on if you take a closer look. And that's all I'm going to spoil. Like Friday the 13th Part 6, one of the big elements of this movie is its tributes to classic horror, and not just classic horror movies like Frankenstein and Dracula and The Mummy and that sort of thing, but it goes into B movies like Night of the Living Dead or more sci-fi kind of stuff, or even, you know, literary horror, that sort of shit. It's very interesting how this movie has a very kind of distinguished kind of feel to it, despite the fact that it's gory as fuck. There's a bit of a Spielberg kind of concept to it in that it's like, it's got this magical feeling to it. It's got this kind of like, you would expect to see this on an episode of Amazing Stories, but a little less more toned down, obviously. There's also a lot of old people in this movie. I don't know why. I don't know if they used like the entire cast from Cocoon, but there's a lot of old people, and that kind of gives it this distinguished feeling again. And it makes you kind of think, oh, maybe this movie's like a little too highbrow. But once it goes into that kind of funny, campy kind of shit, and it starts to show people like getting their heads ripped off and all that sort of stuff, you're kind of like, okay, I know exactly what they're trying to do here. And it's very well done. It's a lot of fun. One of the biggest comparisons that I find with this movie is Cabin in the Woods. Cabin in the Woods kind of story, and especially the ending, is almost rip-off territory of Waxwork. Because when I first saw Cabin in the Woods, I thought, this feels like Waxwork. That's all I'm going to say. So I think it's one of the best things about this movie. It will surprise people at first, because when they're seeing it, they kind of expect it to be a little more slower, a little more, you know, creepy, atmospheric kind of deal, and a little less like straight up shit ton of gore. And then once you hit the shit ton of gore, you're like, okay, I see what this movie's doing. It's very cool that they're doing this. And it's one of the best things about this movie is that they don't hold back from that. You know, they really go all out with the gore on this one. It's great. So when my family got satellite television, we all had the opportunity to choose one channel that we really wanted. And I got to choose the Scream Network, which was great. It was just horror movies 24/7. And I got to check out Waxwork and its sequel, Waxwork 2, Lost in Time. But very pleasantly surprised by both. I wasn't expecting it to be as highbrow as I kind of thought. Now, again, it's not super highbrow, snooty kind of shit, but it has that kind of element to it. It's almost parodying it in a sense. And then it just like, it mixes really well with the gory late 80s horror movie kind of thing going on. It's very fascinating that this was melded together at the same time of trying to make sure you're homaging these classic horror movies really accurately, but then also like giving people like a dosage of late 80s horror gore. But it's very well done, put together. If anything, this is an adventure horror film. It's a true example of adventure horror film. There's a lot of swashbuckling kind of elements to it. Again, I won't spoil too much about like what goes on with the story, but it very much feels like an adventure horror movie. It's very much like House, by example. If you've seen House has a very adventure kind of element to it, and that is present here in Waxwork. Waxwork. Perhaps you will take a closer look into this movie, and I hope you do, because it's a very fun adventure horror film. It's got some very interesting highbrow, lowbrow mixing going on, a lot of gore, which is very surprising, but that's the only thing I'll spoil about it really, is it's got a shit ton of gore, but does a great job at the same time of homaging your classic horror films of yesterday. So with that, this was the 13 Days of Halloween. Thank you very much. I am your host, Eddie Spuhghetti, and join me for the next one, as I will be continuously discussing my top picks for movies, TV shows, and TV specials, stuff that I like to watch around this time of year and that I think you would be into as well. Until the next one, we'll do lunch.